Hello and welcome to Therapist Skills Live with Beth Miller. We are going to jump right into it because, tonight's Therapist Skills training is about socio-political distress happening in our sessions, how to deal with that socio-political distress for our clients and for ourselves, how to help clients and ourselves deal with really charged issues. So today is election day in the United States. Lots of people are probably managing that issue right now in their sessions. And these issues related to election day and or also global wars, lots of issues happening everywhere, voting rights, etc., are likely showing up in our sessions, and they're probably going to be showing up in our sessions for the next several weeks, if not longer. So we as therapists have to find a way to kind of support each other in that. Also to do some training around how we can, one, sort of manage these charged issues in the best way possible for ourselves and for our clients. But on top of that, how we can manage our own countertransference, and also how we can turn these into political therapeutic gold for the client so they can actually get the most out of their sessions, even though the focus of what they're bringing to the table is about the socio-political landscape. So we're going to be talking about all that and more. If you did not see last week's live, you can catch that on Facebook, and if they archived it in Instagram, but they definitely do on Facebook. I also do send out a replay of the lives. If you give me your email, you can send that email to institute@positivecounselingli.com. Or go to my website, and which is positivecounselingli.com, and just put your email in where it says 5 free meditations, and you will also get all of the replays sent to your email. So what are the things that we need to be doing as therapists as this socio-political process evolves right now, regardless of where we stand, what our beliefs are about any of the politics? That is not relevant so much for our clients, but it is going to be relevant as the beliefs that we're bringing into our sessions. What are the things that we need to be able to do and do well consistently during such a politically and socially charged time? I cannot underestimate this part enough. Step one is to emotionally regulate yourself, right? So this trumps probably everything. Emotionally regulating yourself is a tantamount skill. The ability to be able to do that as therapists is not only something we teach, but it has to be something that we practice a lot. And if you're anything like me, you've gotten that wrong. Like sometimes you haven't regulated your emotions well in session. We've all been there. It's happened to all of us. We've all gotten caught off guard. We've all become charged. And it doesn't even have to be about a socio-political issue. It could be about anything. We've all had those moments. And if you haven't, you probably will at some point in your life, in your therapeutic career. So the thing to be practicing as much as possible is to emotionally regulate yourself. That means setting yourself up for success in your sessions by being regulated prior to entering into the session. This means being aligned, being grounded, using the techniques that you probably teach frequently, making sure you're walking your talk, right? So doing breathing exercises, walking, using exercise, weightlifting, your spiritual practices, meditation, yoga, reading, gratitude practices, chakra work. We have to do these things on and with ourselves. And when we know that we're dealing with a very charged time for our clients or for us, it is essential that we go out of our way to triple down on our own skills with ourselves, having multiple practices throughout the day, maybe starting in the morning with a practice, and mid-afternoon, an evening one, so that we are our most grounded and aligned before we even go into session with our clients. The second thing that we really, step two of what we need to do or what we might do in discussing how to manage all of these socio-political issues is to prepare ourselves for our sessions and for these issues before they even happen. So try not to get caught off guard is what I'm saying. Because when we get caught off guard, as therapists, this is when we're most likely to have like a reflexive countertransferential response, and that is not ideal. That often will not work in our favor. When we do that, we typically are going to have to repair something or clean something up, or we might even damage the therapeutic relationship, and we could even lose the client when we do those things. So try not to get caught off guard by preparing yourself before you even go into your sessions about what might happen related to the socio-political issues that are occurring. So be aware of what the current issues are of the day that are happening, so that you know that because those might sort of thread into your sessions, and you don't have to be aware of what the client's views are, but you do need to know how you would respond when they are brought up, okay? If you know you have a client that gets particularly triggered by certain political issues or certain social issues, and those things are occurring in the world at this time, be sure to take extra care to align and ground yourself before your sessions so that you're not vulnerable to reacting. And really pre-think out your responses. Now, this is something I'm not sure a lot of therapists do, but this is super valuable. Try to role play with yourself or with your colleagues or your supervisors how you would respond to certain issues. So last week in the live where we talked about landmines in session, I brought up many landmines that can cause therapists to react. It might be it was the hypothetical man that was talking about abortions. It was the Israeli client and the Palestinian therapist. Lots of different potential landmines that can occur in sessions. I gave a lot of examples of those last week. And we need to pre-think out how we're going to respond to hot issues, especially if we know that we ourselves are charged by them, or if we're very opinionated, or if we have a lot of beliefs about them. So be clear about how you would respond to these hot issues, and especially more inflammatory comments that might kind of get you. And try to prepare around that by practicing with one of your colleagues or your supervisors. I think it's really valuable. And it's not until you do a role play that you realize how hard it is for you to do it well, right? Or how hard it is for you to talk about that topic in a non-charged way. And then you realize you're stumbling through it. And then you say, actually, this issue is going to get me unless I really figure out how I'm going to respond to it and practice it. The third, the part about preparing is also about having a script. So I mentioned this in the last training, and I'm going to say it again now. I really have a script, a very kind of casual, quick script that I say to clients when they talk about social or political issues. And when they do it, they might sort of say like, I don't know how you feel about this, or I probably shouldn't even mention this, or maybe they just go off on the issue. And then I always make sure I say something like, and you can have whatever script it works for you, but I mostly say things like, let me take a moment here to let you know that you are welcome to share any of your thoughts or feelings about what's happening socially or politically at any time. I welcome those, and I do not have any opinion on them. So you do not need to be concerned at all about my thoughts, my feelings, or my beliefs on any of these issues. Please feel free to be yourself and talk about them and not worry about how they would impact me. I'm here to be able to sort of create this space with you, but also to ask you questions so that we can see how this interfaces with your life. However, we won't be having a political discussion. We're not going to be talking about the politics as if we're having a political discussion. We're going to talk about how your beliefs about what's happening in politics in the social world are affecting you. Right? So I'm not going to banter with my clients about political things or social things. Instead, what I'm doing is saying, this is a great place for you to talk about all these things. I have no judgment. All of it is welcome here. Please do that. But it will be a conversation about how these things affect you. It won't be a political discussion. And I think clients get that. And that creates great boundaries right from the get-go. And then they also will say, thank you so much. I often get thanked. Thank you so much for letting me talk about these things here. Step 3 is about like, well, how do you actually respond when clients bring these issues up in session? Like what do you do? Here, the client comes in, they're either really upset about what's happening in politics, or they're agitated, or they're anxious about it. A lot of my clients are starting sessions saying, I've been anxious for the last 3 days about the election coming up, or I'm very anxious about what's going to happen after the election, or I'm very upset about what's happening with the border, or I'm upset about what's happening with reproductive rights. And it doesn't matter whether they're on the left, right, the center. That really is not what's important. What's important is that I know how to respond when they bring these things to the session. So one is respond thoughtfully. Do not react. And in order to not react, it requires step 1 and step 2. Emotionally regulate yourself and prepare for these sessions so that you know how you will react. That way you can stay in alignment and you can not react to them, and you'll be able to respond. Because these issues are hard for us too, as therapists, because we're humans, we're people living in this same world. That's not easy to do. There's not a lot of roles in life where the person you're talking to stays neutral. That's a very unique thing. So since we are responsible for doing that and just helping the client, it is imperative that we not react. It's imperative that we really respond thoughtfully. The next thing is in this part of it is every single moment you have to be conscious about being non-judgmental. Every single moment you have to take a nice deep breath and step into being non-judgmental. That is a requirement for this job, is to step into being non-judgmental over and over and over again. So that is a great discipline that therapists have to practice, and it's one that's going to get a lot of practice right now in the socio-political climate that we're in. Also, remind yourself that the client's beliefs are not your responsibility to change. This person is not your client so that you can shape their beliefs about the world. That's not why they're there before you. They're not your clay. They're not somebody for you to craft into this or that, or believe this or that. Their beliefs, even if they're polarizing in comparison with yours, even if they do not vibe with what you think is true about humanity, even if you are offended or appalled by them, they are not for you to change. That is not your role. There might be some inquiry, there might be curiosity, there might be non-judgmental exploration, but not to change their beliefs. And it's really important that we remember that as therapists, because that could get really dicey for us. Also, do not respond. So not responding, just being like the blinking therapist that's just listening but saying nothing, can really come off as a very judgmental listener, as being detached, as being shaming towards a client. So not responding at all is not a great strategy. Now, if you're caught off guard and you need a minute to take a deep breath, that's okay. But don't just ignore what the client says or just blink through it, because that's not a great therapeutic response. It's not going to help the client in any way, and it might actually give the wrong impression about your thoughts or your feelings about the client or what they've said. Validate. Become a validating machine. Even just simply reflecting back what the client has said in a validating way may be all you need to do in a session. There might be times when the client is in a really hot sociopolitical state or a reaction about what's happening, that you just reflecting back in a validating way might be a great strategy. It may not be the only thing you do, and most people know that I don't believe in just doing that in sessions. I really don't. But it is a very That's a very stable response to have. It's a very thoughtful, helpful response to just reflect back what the client has said in a validating way, because the validation goes a long way. So just things like, yes, I can see that this is really hard for you, or it makes sense that you be upset about what's happening with the election because you didn't want this candidate or that candidate to win, or I understand how hard this is for you. Tell me more. I'm here as a non-judgmental listener. I want to hear more about how you feel. Just doing that creates the right landscape in your sessions to be able to keep them in a healthy space for your client and for yourself, and to gain the most out of the session. The next thing for you to do is to be curious. Like, curiosity is the way. Curiosity is the way in general in our sessions, but it is absolutely the way when it comes to these hot socio-political issues. Asking the client a lot of questions is one of the ways of keeping an open, non-judgmental space, and also helps the client to explore what's happening deeper, right? So tell me more about what's important about this issue to you. Bring me into your worldview so I can understand what it's like to be coming at this from your point of view. Would it be okay if I asked about how this issue affects you? Would you be willing to explore more of this? How do these affect your life? How do these issues affect your life on a daily basis? How does this position affect your relationship at home? How does it affect work? How does it affect recreation, fun? Would you like to brainstorm ways to cope with the stress of this with me, so that we can find ways to alleviate some of the stress of the way that you're feeling? So if the client is open to those things, if you can ask more questions, then you have a way of being able to make the conversation deeper about what's happening for them related to the socio-political world, and at the same time, keep yourself in the right kind of boundaried space for you. And that openness and that curiosity is a really nice sign of being non-judgmental too. Step 4, and this is such an important one, although I think they all are, is to see therapy as a microcosm of the client's world. So what happens in session is often a snapshot of what is happening outside of session for the client. This is a very important clinical awareness. It might be a little overlooked sometimes. And if you want to have deeper sessions with your client, this is an essential awareness to have, an essential insight. The therapeutic relationship and what's happening in that therapeutic room over time really starts to show itself, and sometimes even from session 1, can show itself as a microcosm, a snapshot of what's occurring out there for the client, how the client sees the world, how the client interfaces with people, how the client communicates, what things are difficult for the client, what things aren't. So, for example, if the client is aggressively talking about a political view with you in session, or is like very, very dysregulated by it, there's a really good chance that that's happening for the client outside of session too. Not always, but a very good chance. So that can give you insight to be able to say, how is this affecting your life outside of here? Right, because you're seeing it in front of you. So now you can extrapolate and say, well, what's it like out there for you? Not just in here with me. Or another example is if the client is feeling really defeated about what's happening politically, they may also, or like for example, they may also be feeling defeated by other challenges in their lives. They might have a challenge with accessing happiness when things are imperfect. They might have difficulty with resiliency. They might find that their depression is magnifying because of negative things that they're consuming in media or around them. So how can we talk about this with them? Can we, for example, talk to them about research that we are aware of about resiliency and how we can build more resiliency in the brain, and ask them if they might want to strengthen that, not just more coping skills, but more resiliency, because we're seeing it in the room and we're recognizing that this might be a much bigger issue everywhere else in their lives as well. Okay. Step 5, super big one. Model and teach the behavior that you want your client to learn in sessions with starting with your behavior first, right? So your relationship with the client can be a center of trust and also a center for teaching, where the client might be learning what skillful relational, emotional, or communication looks like. And that can really start with you. And hopefully it is starting with you. So for example, you can model and teach reflective listening and curiosity. And if you're doing that with the client, where you're showing the client being really interested, being curious, reflectively listening back with them, then they might be able to do that with their friends or their family or others in their socio-political world that don't agree with them, right? Like, you can model and teach them how to listen, how to be curious, whether you agree with them or not. That is not really relevant. And this can teach them the skills of being non-judgmental, curious, open in their real life interactions. As a matter of fact, when you do it naturally with them, you can ask them to do it back with you so that they can make those skills actually portable in role playing with you. The same is true for modeling and teaching emotion regulation. So if the client's therapeutic goals might include learning how to regulate their emotions more, maybe regulating their anxiety more, their frustration, their rage, their anger, their feelings of defeat, then you can make this, what's happening in their reactions to the socio-political world, a great time to be practicing emotion regulation skills. In fact, this might be one of the wisest things that you can do in your session. So if your client comes in and or at some point during the session, they're expressing being really upset about whatever the issues are, listen, validate, ask questions, be curious, and then also suggest, might it be a good time for us to help you emotionally regulate right now? Can we use some of these emotion regulation skills that we've been discussing? Can I teach you a new one, or can we use some of the ones that we've been covering so that you can see how to use them in real life with me right here, right? Or if you get dysregulated during session and you notice the client is dysregulated in session, one of the number one skills that you can use is to regulate together. In other words, you say to the client, I feel like this is a really dysregulating conversation. I believe you're getting pretty dysregulated. Would you agree? I'm even feeling dysregulated. Why don't we both take a moment to use that breathing exercise? Or would it be okay if I guided both of us through a brief meditation? How about we do a grounding exercise right now? What would it be like if we do a container exercise? And if you bring that into the session, you're not only showing the client that it's okay to become dysregulated, but you're also showing them that you get dysregulated too, that that's human. And when that happens, it's nothing to be ashamed of. We just jump in and use skills to be able to re-regulate ourselves. And that is an incredible teaching tool for them. It's great modeling, and it's great teaching for the next situation that they're in when they feel dysregulated. You can also model and teach compassion and being non-judgmental. So you can, for example, if you've been talking about empathy with the client and you've been trying to help them become more empathetic, because that's one of the goals you guys have decided on would be an asset to them to learn, then you might even, when they're bringing a socio-political issue in, say, hey, you know what? Why don't we see if we can develop some of that empathy for the people that have the opposite political views as you. Let's see if we can find a way to think like them or see what it's like to be like them. And we can even do that on the people that are the hardest to do it on in the world. And by doing that, you're not only using that skill, you're teaching it, but you're modeling it as well, which is just incredibly beneficial to the client. And then lastly is to see absolutely everything as a potential clinical issue. See absolutely everything that's occurring as a potential clinical issue. And I'm going to be talking about this further because everything that happens in session is a possibility for you to be able to see it through clinical eyes. So when a client doesn't want to pay for a session, that's a clinical issue. It's not just a financial issue. It's not just a money issue. It's a clinical issue, or it can be. And it has a lot of potential therapeutic gold in it. When the client is objecting to a socio-political issue, it might very well be a clinical issue too, meaning we can find the ways to discover the therapeutic gold in the middle of what seems like just a belief about socio-political culture, right? So we ourselves can look deeper and find the ways to look for all of the gold that's possible in these really difficult, chaotic, challenging, charged times for clients. And we have a lot of opportunity here. I'm going to be talking about that further in one of our next sessions. In the meantime, here's what I'd like you to consider practicing for this week, because it is in the practice where we become better therapists. So remember to emotionally regulate yourself before session, and also be emotionally regulating yourself at least 3 times a day right now during these very charged times, so that you are the most possibly regulated during your sessions. Remember to prepare before your sessions and ground beforehand. Remember to be super curious and to be asking a ton of questions while also releasing judgment, while validating. Remember, it's not your job to change your client's beliefs whatsoever. Remember to see what is the therapy as a microcosm of what is happening in their world outside of session, and also see everything as a potential clinical issue. And I'm going to unpack that more in future trainings. Help them to practice the skills and tools that you're already working on by weaving them together with the socio-political issues that they're charged about right now. And so I wish you a wonderful week of therapy. I know that this week and maybe future weeks to come might be really challenging to all of us in our role, but we do have a really important role in helping the clients at the same time. So I urge you to reach out to me at institute@positivecounselingli.com. Feel free to ask any questions, give me any feedback about the training so that I can incorporate that into the next training that comes up. That way I can really serve your needs. Have a wonderful week, and I wish you a peaceful, fabulous future of therapy.